Hey y'all, Rick Houston here, and I want to tell you about my new show, the Moonshine and Motorsports Racing Podcast. I've partnered up with the state of North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources to help uncover the history behind moonshining mountain boys, professional wheelmen, and the backwoods and city lights of the Tar Heel State. In the first episode, I sat down with Winston Kelly at the NASCAR Hall of Fame for a little behind-the-scenes gossip about Junior Johnson's engineering skills.
He's got two things in his hand, pipe wrench and channel lock pliers. And they weren't new. They had been around the block a time or two.
Wasn't the first steel they built, I bet.
No. I think the pliers had been red before, but paint had worn off.
And in the second episode, I talked to a professional hillbilly, a.k.a. Dr. Daniel Pierce of UNC Asheville, to find out the real history of moonshiners and their battles with the revenuers.
He wrote about one of his experience of trying to chase down this bootlegger in this souped-up car, and he complained that the government gave him these piece of crap, cheapo cars, and that were really no match, but he thought he was doing pretty good, and then the guy just hits it and just takes off and practically disappeared. But then the guy makes a bootleg turn and comes back towards him. And as he said, it was a game of chicken, and I was the chicken. And so he ran off the road. And actually, he was the guy who caught Junior Johnson at his daddy's steel when Junior got tangled up in a barbed wire fence.
So check out the Moonshine and Motorsports Racing Podcast, available on YouTube, dailydownforce.com, and all of your favorite podcasting platforms. And be sure to check out my regular show on NASCAR history, the Scene Vault Podcast.
Hey there, NASCAR fans. Have you got your copy of the latest edition of NASCAR Pole Position Print Magazine? If not, there's no better time than now to subscribe at polepositionmag.com. NASCAR Pole Position is the only print magazine covering NASCAR. Officially licensed by NASCAR, NASCAR Pole Position Magazine is published throughout the NASCAR season, and each edition is an instant collector's item, packed with great feature stories and photography. The magazine is even mailed to you in a poly bag for those who love to collect NASCAR memorabilia. At polepositionmag.com, you can even find past issues available to purchase. Get your subscription to NASCAR Pole Position and get great NASCAR content delivered straight to your mailbox throughout the season. Learn more at polepositionmag.com. That's polepositionmag.com.
Eric Estepp here. One of my favorite parts of being a NASCAR fan is collecting diecasts. It's how I got my start on YouTube, actually. To me, a room is not complete until it features shelves of NASCAR diecast cars. It's as good a time as ever to continue your collection or begin an all-new one by pre-ordering your favorite driver's 2022 next-gen diecast at lionelracing.com or at any authorized Lionel retailer. Lionel is the official diecast of NASCAR, and don't miss Lionel Racing's NASCAR Authentics diecasts at a Walmart or Target near you. Not only is Lionel the official diecast of NASCAR, but they're also official supporters of the Out of the Groove podcast network. So what are you waiting for? Head to lionelracing.com to order your favorite driver's 2022 diecast.
In this episode of Maiden Level Cross, you're going to hear about the NASCAR playoff format, the stress when Bubba Wallace says hello, a controversial Matt Kenseth opinion, and a behind-the-scenes look into how Thad got his NASCAR truck ride.
You're listening to Maiden Level Cross, presented by Pristine Auctions. I'm Thad Moffitt.
And I'm Roland George.
And today we have a very special guest joining us, Eric Estepp.
Yeah, Thad. NASCAR YouTube creator Eric Estepp, he started his channel a few years ago, starting with diecast stop motion videos, and so far he's racked up millions of views, and he's pretty much the number one NASCAR YouTuber out there, so pumped to have him on board the show.
Yeah, so a couple years ago I didn't know who Eric Estepp was, and now he's like a household name in the garage, so all props to him for everything that he's accomplished already in his short NASCAR career, and excited to talk to him today and learn some stuff about him.
Right on. Let's get into it.
And joining us today is Eric Estepp. Eric, thank you for coming on Maiden Level Cross today and joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Thad. Great to be here.
Yeah, so we wanted to ask you a couple questions kind of about how you got started into the NASCAR stuff. So obviously, looking back at some of your history, you did stop motion videos. How did you turn from stop motion videos to where you're at now?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I always pride myself in my YouTube career. I was able to sort of transition from a couple different types of content and still find an audience. That's hard to do. I think a lot of traditional YouTubers are always afraid to try anything different because you risk alienating your current audience and you may not find something better at the end of the rainbow. But for me, I grew up doing those stop motion videos because I had a bunch of die cast cars and my parents had a spare bedroom. I could set up these little Lego paper and plastic racetracks in, and it was just fun. It was a fun hobby. It was a great way for me to connect to the NASCAR online space. Because growing up, I didn't know really many friends in my neighborhood who watched racing or cared about it nearly to the level or extent that I did. So that was fun to do kind of in high school. It's just a side gig, a way to be a part of the NASCAR conversation and community. But when I left for college and I went to film school actually for a few years, I did the whole random roommate deal. And we were in a small dorm room I was there with a total stranger, physically could not keep doing those stop motion videos. And they were fun to do, but they were also tedious. I don't know if you've ever had to do stop motion animation or anything like that, Thad, but it's just tedious. It's very repetitive. It's hours of doing the exact same thing over and over again. It's like muscle memory. So I was looking for a new way to contribute to the online NASCAR space. And I looked around at existing NASCAR media, and all due respect to many of the legends and the greats, but many of them I looked at were 40, 50, 60 years old. They had their connections. They'd obviously been around a long time, very knowledgeable, but I felt like they didn't speak to the 20-year-old or the 15, 16-year-old as well as maybe I could. So that's the gap I tried to fill. I wanted to just sort of bring that perspective into the NASCAR world. And if people latched onto it, great. If they didn't, well, I was in college. I guess I'd have to go get a real job, hopefully graduate and everything would go well. So that was sort of the background of it. It was partially just necessity. I just wanted to keep making content and being a part of the conversation. And that was the only physical way I could at that time. But I think I was also just ready at that point in my life. I was older and wanted to, I don't know, I guess it sounds cheesy, but contribute something a bit more, not meaningful, but I guess like I wanted to try and find solutions to bigger problems. Doing those stop motion videos were fun, good content, got a lot of kids, a lot of folks energized and excited, but we weren't really approaching the bigger topics like how does NASCAR reach different demographics, different audiences, what racing is good racing, what's actually entertaining, what's fun to talk about, and no, that transition I think came at the perfect time in my life.
Yeah, it's kind of like your stepping stone was like the stop motion videos to where you are now, like somewhat as mine was go-karts, late models, ARCA trucks. The longer you're in it, the more you want of it, right? And the more you're able to talk about it. And so going back to something you just said, that you were in high school and middle school when you had the diecast. So one of the questions I had, not knowing a whole lot about your background, was like, was this something you wanted to do from an early age? Because like for me, I was born into a family that raced, right? But so it's hard for me to imagine like kids just waking up one day and being like, man, NASCAR is the coolest thing ever. I want to be part of it. So, because for me, it was like every conversation we ever had at family Thanksgiving was like NASCAR. We tried to steer ourselves different, but then every story from grandpa leads back into, one time we were at the racetrack and this happened. So
tell us about that, Eric. I mean, you've been, we all know you as like the big NASCAR guy, but I mean, how far back did that go? Is that, I know you're big into baseball, but was your dad taking you races at an early age? Like how far back does the NASCAR addiction go?
Yeah. So Thad, you and I are the exact opposite. Yeah. You grew up in the racing family, like the one. I grew up in the exact opposite. I'm from Houston, Texas, and there's racing out there, but my parents didn't care about racing. Me and my dad got into NASCAR at about the same time. I got into it when I was about 7 years old. Like any kid, I like playing with Hot Wheels cars. I like the idea of race cars and playing Mario Kart and racing video games. And I think one day I just stumbled upon a NASCAR race on TV, and I just realized, oh my gosh, racing is real. It's not just loop-de-doops and Hot Wheels cars and explosions. I'm like, oh wow, this is a real thing. And so I just latched onto it from there. And I think why NASCAR always stuck with me compared to other motorsports, because I don't I'm honest, maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't watch a ton of other motorsports. I'll watch IndyCar off and on. I'll watch F1 off and on. I'll keep up with some of the big, short track races throughout the year. I'll keep up with what's going on there. But NASCAR is the number one motorsport I watch. I watch a lot of other sports like basketball and baseball and football. And I did as a kid as well. But I think why I always came back to NASCAR as like my motorsport of choice is because it's to me the most relatable. Obviously, the cars reminiscent of real cars you drive on the street. Obviously, they're tricked out and trimmed out and high powered and all that stuff. But, I think the fact that it was an American sport, also very relatable. It's harder for me to relate to, a racetrack in Abu Dhabi than it is, Texas Motor Speedway. Like that's much more, I get that. I understand that. And it's weird as well. I've never driven a race car. I mean, I've like raced go-karts at the family fun center with my friends before, but I've never driven a race car, but I've like played enough video games and things that, I'll be playing Forza or Need for Speed and, you hit the corner just right, complete the pass. It feels good. Like, it feels like the same as when you like hit a line drive in baseball or something like, so, I can kind of relate to that. It's all relatable. Even like the playoffs. A lot of folks don't like the playoffs. I completely understand why. And racing is very different than stick and ball sports. Totally understand that. But because I didn't grow up watching other racing, I grew up watching baseball. The idea of a playoff and putting an emphasis on the final 10 races, you got to bring your best stuff late in the year. Like that always made sense to me in a way maybe it doesn't for a lot of other, fans or people who come from purely racing backgrounds. So at its core, I think why I fell in love with NASCAR as opposed to maybe other motorsports is just for all those reasons. It was the most relatable motorsport to me.
Got you. What I was just thinking about playoffs, and I just wanted to lead into this question. Your favorite driver, Matt Kenseth. It's no surprise. Your channel colors are black and yellow. Brennan Poole got you on track last year at Phoenix with a Matt Kenseth scheme. Why is Matt Kenseth your favorite driver? He's quiet, calculated, focused. Why does Eric like Matt Kenseth?
It really doesn't make any sense. As a kid, I thought the black and yellow DeWalt car looked cool. So I started, let's start there. And then it was actually, we visited one of my mom's old high school friends. I think she lived in Georgia at the time. And I remember going into like her son, who's a little older than me, his bedroom, and he had Matt Kenseth stuff everywhere. And I'm like, oh, that's the guy from the NASCAR Thunder games. Wait, I know this car. And I found out later that they were like, she was like his third cousin, twice removed, something like that. There was a tie in there. But at that moment, I thought, okay, I'll start watching for Matt Kenseth more. And, I just grew to like his no nonsense personality. He was all about results, worked hard, head down. Typically, at least not until late in his career, he wasn't part of the drama most weeks. And I kind of like that. Let the other drivers be the headlines for maybe the wrong reasons. Matt Kenseth, when he's the headline, it's because he's winning or dominating or just cool, calm, quiet consistency. I always just respected that. The louder voices are the most entertaining, but sometimes it's the quieter guys who are the actually best at what they do. And so I think that's why I gravitated towards Kenseth over the years.
Well, that's relatable because you started it off by saying that you liked Matt Kenseth because of the black and yellow car as a kid. So like before, when I was like a little kid, like 5 or younger, Tony Stewart was my favorite because he drove the Home Depot car and my favorite color was orange. And so like, even though
doesn't get much more orange than that,
even though my family like owned race cars when I was a kid, I mean, that's initially what got me interested was the Home Depot car and watching Tony Stewart every weekend. And then seeing what he's turned his program into is really impressive. And what he does for motorsports as a whole, whether it's dirt racing or drag racing or anything, is really cool. So you said you had never driven a race car. One of the questions when we were talking about having you on the show was, did Eric ever have interest in like being a race car driver? I know you're 6'7",
yes.
So it's going to be like impossible to fit you in a race car. Like we would have to raise the roof way up to get you in there. Yeah. But I just wondered, like a lot of the guys I talked to, especially like here at the garage, they were like, I never really wanted to drive. I just wanted to work on the things. Like I thought they were the coolest thing ever. So is it like you just wanted to talk about it all the time, or was driving something that you were like, man, that'd be cool?
Yeah. I mean, when I was playing those NASCAR Thunder games as a kid, I'd like to imagine it was me in the car. Sure. Like, oh man, winning in front of my home crowd at Texas. This is awesome. But no, I never considered being a driver. Yeah, I don't know why I didn't. I guess it just seemed so far-fetched to me. I think even at a young age, I just sort of was aware of how expensive it was going to be. And again, not coming from a racing family, like it was going to be difficult. We could have found a way. Like if I really pushed that, I'm sure we could have gotten somewhere. My parents were always very supportive of all the sports and extracurriculars I always did. So I'm sure we could have tried it, but it was never really on the horizon for me. I guess I was too busy with other stuff. And even when I was, in my early days of YouTube, like I said, I went to film school. My first passion beyond sports was also just, I liked content creation, the visual storytelling. I like that kind of stuff. I was kind of I played a lot of sports as a kid, but when I wasn't playing sports, I was the nerdy kid with the camera trying to get his friends to act in, little short films around the neighborhood all the time. And so, I had different passions. Like I said, going into college, I didn't expect to be working in the racing industry. I always thought it was just going to be kind of a fun hobby or a side project. So no, I never really thought about driving, but you're right. At this point, I don't even know. Like, better than me. Are there any cars that I would like naturally fit in? Like, could I fit in a monster truck?
You could probably fit in a monster truck
or a truck. You think
Right.
a NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series truck would fit, Eric?
I don't know if we stretched it out a little bit.
Well, I had the honor of being with Eric at Phoenix with Brennan, and I got to meet his mom and dad, and it was really cool. So, Maiden Level Cross, this podcast, it's all about family, faith, friends, and the hard work and perseverance that it takes to get through life, right? It's interesting. You mentioned that if you wanted to go racing, your parents would have supported you. Tell us about that. Like, what is it like having those parents right behind you? I mean, Thad's got amazing parents that support him. And like I said, I was an eyewitness to your parents. They were truly proud that day. How much of an impact have they had in your success doing the channel and becoming like one of the top NASCAR influencers there?
Yeah. And I mean, their support has been incredible all along, still to this day. At first it was just a side project, but they support anyways. Like I said, they let me kind of take over the spare bedroom that was being used for storage to work on my little sets and tracks and things. It's tough. I mean, it's cliche to say, but it's really hard to get where you want to go in life without help, without strong support. And in my case, both my parents have absolutely been that for me from the very beginning. And it would have been easy. My dad's a software engineer. My mom's an art teacher. She's worked at like elementary and middle schools her whole life. But my dad's, he's traditional, business, mathematics job. When I told him I wanted to go to film school or I wanted to do YouTube as a big side project content, he could have easily scoffed his nose at that and said, no, okay. Like, but how about you take a programming class as well? He could have easily said something like that, but I don't know. I guess for whatever it was, there was it's weird to think of it this way, but there was like a mutual respect there, I guess, when I was 15, 16, 17, that, maybe they saw that I knew what I was doing. I was good at what I was doing. And so they were comfortable letting me continue to pursue that path. And I knew I could trust them to support me no matter what. So it's super important. And I'm obviously extremely thankful that they've been as supportive throughout my life as they have been, no matter what I wanted to do. So yeah, it wouldn't have been possible. None of this would be possible without what they've been able to do for me over the years.
Yeah. Without my family, there's no telling what I would be doing. I mean, with grandpa's support and my parents' support and Uncle Kyle and everybody in the family kind of pulling in the same direction has led me down this path and has been supportive to me as well. So I definitely know where you're coming from on that one. And so like now that this channel has grown and you've been doing this for a few years, what is like some of your favorite experiences that you've been able to do? Or, for me, I can pinpoint like a handful of things that I think are really cool that I've got to do with my grandpa or just with my family at the track in general. So I was interested to hear what yours were.
Yeah. Oh, there's a few that definitely jump into my mind. And then there's other things that I think about, like when I'm like falling asleep at night or in the shower and it hits me, I'm like, oh, I forgot I did that. Like, that's crazy that got to happen. The big one, I mean, Roland was obviously a huge part of it, but getting the out of the groove car on track at Phoenix last year was just surreal. And to work with Brennan, who I knew a little bit at the time, gotten to know a lot better since then, also just made that really, really fun. Family was there. That weekend that day was overwhelming because not only was all that happening, but I went back to the hotel that night and got to see my Astros win a World Series. So I remember that day was nuts. That day was a dawn to dusk. It was a nonstop party. But beyond that, actually, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, Thad, but getting your grandfather, having the King on my show last year, I believe it was, had a sort of a sponsor deal come together, and he was able to come on the show for a bit, ask him a few racing questions. That was unbelievable. Absolutely. Just a lot of the people I've met, even now, just going to the racetrack and being allowed to, I guess, walk up to drivers and ask them questions that I've had since I was a kid, or questions that popped up recently that are more relevant, is really, really neat. And everyone's always been really cool, really nice about it. So, I mean, I'm trying to think of other like individual things. We've gotten to do a lot of fun events. We do this Halloween iRacing race every year that for charity. That's always really fun.
That did such an awesome job in that race, if I recall. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your participation. It's more will come to me, I'm sure, but it's that kind of thing. It's so much. It's overwhelming, honestly, and I'm just thankful for every experience.
So, Eric, with that being said, you said your people definitely recognize you at the track. I've been with you at the track, and it's hilarious. Everyone says you're so tall. Let's say like 5 years ago to today, do you feel like you are now part of the everyday NASCAR discussion with drivers? Do drivers recognize you and say, hey, what's going on, Eric? Like, has that changed? Have you seen that happen in your career?
A little bit, yeah. Definitely some drivers who I wouldn't expect to have come up and said things to me that they watch or that they've seen what I talk about. And honestly, this is sad. That stresses me the hell out. Like when I hear that, because I mean, 5 years ago, I was so far removed from the sport. I was just a guy in his apartment talking to his camera, and I felt like there were no repercussions. I didn't have to, confront any of these people in my day-to-day life. Now I go to the racetrack, and at one point Bubba Wallace said hi. He said, "Hey, what's up?" And I was like, "Oh, Bubba knows who I am." And then I was like, "Shit, what have I said about Bubba Wallace? Let me make sure. What have I not said anything too bad?" Like I don't usually. I feel like when I criticize, it's hopefully fair. It's rooted in fairness. But yeah, it's surreal when that happens, but it also stresses me out, honestly. It's something I've gotten better at. A couple of years ago when it first would happen from time to time, I got really like, oh my gosh, it hit me like a ton of bricks. But now it's a little easier to stomach. But it was tough at first because I'm not great at speaking in front of an audience. I stress out. I'm not most people do, but I stress out a ton having to do any sort of public speaking. But it's easier for me to talk like just to the two of you, or even talk to a YouTube audience when all I can see is a number on the bottom. Like, I might see 10,000 there. That's a lot of people. It doesn't really stress me out. When I actually see people and I'm confronted with that reality face to face, that's when I'm like, oh my gosh, it feels infinitely more real. And that's cool, but it also could be a little stressful.
So in that respect, and I don't want to put you on the spot here, but facts are facts.
Go for it.
You are probably, if not, I'm just going to say, you're the most popular NASCAR influencer out there. I'm just going to say, I'm going to put it out there.
Well, thank you.
Everyone knows Eric Estepp, Out of the Groove. What is it like wearing that crown in the garage area on the internet? Again, I'm going to lay it on you thick, but I truly believe that. I mean, your face is a logo. I mean, it was the logo or the sponsor logo of the car. You have like surpassed just being Eric Estepp. You are now Eric Estepp, Out of the Groove.
Oh.
What is that?
Voice.
You definitely don't strike me as getting a big head. I've talked to you several times. You're the nicest, most down to earth guy, just like Thad and the King. How have you managed that? Because there's so many guys in your position that get to where they're at, and they could turn around and just not be who they are anymore. But you have just maintained that. So what's it been like having that responsibility? I'm just going to call it, because it is a responsibility in some sort for younger fans, for new fans of the sport. You really are one of the first faces they see on the YouTube space for NASCAR.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but to your point about not having a big head, I would counter that with I literally put my giant head on a race car. So that's debatable. That is up for debate still. But no, I mean, to answer your question, I guess I think in some ways it ties back to why I liked rooting for Matt Kenseth, because I don't feel like he ever had, at least not publicly, I haven't talked to him much in private, but he never seemed to have a big head. He was obviously confident, knew what he was doing, knew he was good, was very sure of himself, but he was very quiet, heads down, do the work, get the results. And I think growing up, that's kind of how I feel like I was. At least that's how I'd like to think I was. And I think I still am that way a bit to this to this day. Yeah, I just, I always go back to, I realize how likely, I guess, my journey is. 4 years ago, I wasn't expecting to be doing what I'm doing now full time, and it's a ton of fun. And I just try to keep that perspective, not take that for granted. It takes a lot of work to get to this point, and you feel like if you're going to stay here especially with how fast things on the internet change, it's going to take a lot of work to keep growing, to keep going where you want to go. So I guess maybe also at the core of it, there's a fear there. There's a fear of like that, knowing that it's really easy for everything you've worked on or built up towards to fall apart. It gets really easy. See it all the time with people. Their reputations can change just like that. If they make a mistake, if they do something, they step out of line, they do something wrong. So yeah, I think there's that in the back of my head as well, is everything is very delicate. It's all very fragile. So I'm thankful to be in the position I'm in, and I wake up every day to try not to screw it up, I guess. That may not be the best way to think of it. It'd probably be better if you have more like an emboldened confidence and you just go out there, chest out and just, I'm going to do what's right, or I'm going to do what I think I should do because I know better. Some of that confidence is good, but there's a fine line between obviously confidence and arrogance. And that's a line I'm always really afraid of crossing. So maybe I err a little too far on the side of caution sometimes, but no, I just enjoy what I do, and I'm glad I get to keep doing it.
That's the number one thing, right? Just enjoying what you do. Just from my standpoint, the same thing. I wouldn't want to do anything other than what I do now. And I'm sure you feel the same way about what you do. So you've got to travel around with the circuit now. You've got to watch some good races, some not so good races, some that you probably wish you didn't go to, maybe. But what is your favorite track?
Growing up, it was Bristol. And I think still watching on TV, it's Bristol Motor Speed. But Dirt Bristol, I liked it more than a lot of people did. But, traditional concrete Bristol is probably my favorite track. But getting to visit more and more tracks over the last few years, I've often said that if I were bringing a new fan or someone who is only loosely familiar with NASCAR to a race, I would take them to Daytona. I just think the facility is unbeatable, and the style of racing is, I think, it's easier to follow. Let's just say, I guess, if you're a new fan, you can kind of just tell, all right, whoever's in front of that mess of cars, that's the leader, more times than not. And it's easier to kind of, I think, fall in love with in that respect. And the speed, of course. So it's probably still between Bristol and Daytona. They're both very different. Bristol, a little more kind of harder to get to, a little more rural, but there's not a bad seat in the house there. I will say that Daytona, there are bad seats at Daytona, in my opinion. There's at least, like, I wouldn't want to sit right up against the fence at Daytona for 200 laps. I don't know how you could do it. I did it once at Texas as a kid, and I had whiplash going like this, whipping my head back and forth for however many laps it was. So it's between those two.
We can agree on that, because I usually tell people that Bristol is somewhere that I could make laps all day long, but it's the Daytona atmosphere that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the driving under the tunnel, and people are lined up on both sides of me. Like, if you could take Daytona's atmosphere and move it to all the tracks, it would be.
Yeah.
But Bristol is for sure an awesome place.
Yeah. So Daytona's it's state of the art. It's really, really, really nice what they've done with that place, which is why I think, like, new fans, that's like the easiest entry point. Like Bristol, if you're not sort of used to that lifestyle, some folks might go to Bristol and be like a culture shock. Daytona, I don't think it's that way. That's like Daytona's the kiddie pool, just dipping your toe in, getting, your foot in the door, trying to understand NASCAR.
Yeah. So what does the future hold for Eric Estepp? Like, you got any big plans coming up, or?
Right now I'm working on planning what races I'm going to go to next year. Every year I try to add at least a couple new tracks I've never been to. Last year it was Michigan. I'd never been there. That was cool. Chicago, I guess, technically. North Wilkesboro, hadn't been to those places. This year I think I'm going to do Kansas. Kansas is a track everyone speaks very highly of. I want to go see Kansas. But other than that, longer term, it's hard for me to think more than a year in advance, honestly. I think going into next year, one thing I really want to focus on with my show, with my channel, is I want to sort of put my money where my mouth is. I've talked about, even on this podcast here today, that I think NASCAR needs to do a better job connecting to people our age, guys in their 20s, 30s, that younger fan. And I think because I'm 26 now, I can do that as well or better than anybody else. I feel like I can relate to that fan real easily, real naturally. So going forward, I want my content this next year to reach that audience. I want to do everything with that audience in mind. And my show, the audience for my show is very diverse. Folks come up to me at the track who are 12 years old, 60 years old, everywhere in between. But I want to focus on the 20, 30-year-old fan, really try to connect with them. And if other folks gravitate towards it, that's great. They're along for the ride. I love that. So what that exactly looks like, I'm not sure yet. Some of that is just, you got to keep up with the way people consume content. YouTube's huge still, but you got the rise of TikTok and YouTube Shorts and other social media. So it's creating new original content, trying to find ways to repurpose existing content. There's only so many hours in a day, I can only spread myself so thin, but that's where my head goes in the short term. It's just, what can I do to evolve the content that next level to keep it fresh, keep it relevant, or just to make the most out of it. Bigger picture, 5-10 years, I don't know. I might still be doing this, maybe something bigger, better. There's tons of irons in the fire, of course, or ideas thrown, when I say irons in the fire, I should just say ideas in the back of my mind that are being worked on that would be like, it'd be cool to do this, cool to try this, be a part of this. But what all comes to fruition and when, I am not 100% sure.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Well, I have one more question. I'm going to ask the hardest question you probably need to answer. I don't know if a fan's ever asked you this question. Yeah. So no pressure here. Martinsville, 2015. the incident.
All right. What's the question?
Matt Kenseth, was he in the right or the wrong?
When that incident first happened, I didn't like it. I was like, nope, that's not Matt Kenseth. That was too far. I thought about it a little bit more, and I saw everybody else cheering it. That was the thing. Everybody else was thrilled.
Did you cheer, Eric, when you saw that? Did you cheer? Oh, wow.
No, I was silent. I was silent when I first saw it happen. Everybody else cheering made me revisit. I'm like, well, damn, okay, maybe I'm trying to be objective here. Maybe Kenseth wasn't the right. And, you look back at it. I don't think he was 100% in the right. I think he was right to retaliate against Logano. Logano deserved to get wrecked. Maybe not there. I just looked at the whole picture. What happened at Kansas, he spins you out. You were blocking. Logano's maybe more in the wrong there, but it's not that big a deal. I think, that alone wasn't worth the retaliation. Talladega, there was some silly business. What pissed me off the most was Martinsville earlier in the race when Logano and Keselowski were playing those games on the restart and Brad dumps Kenseth. Just spun him out. Yep. He says something broke. I don't believe him. To this day, I still don't believe it. And I remember the Radioactive did Logano dirty. They showed his in-car of him fist pumping when it happened. At that point, nope, you're in the wall. Well, yeah, I still don't agree with plowing someone into the outside wall when you're 20 laps down or whatever the case may be. I raked Jeff Gordon over the coals for doing the same thing 3 years earlier. But the more I think about it, some retaliation was justified. I still don't think that would have been the best way to do it.
Well, I speak on behalf of probably your audience. I can sleep better at night now knowing Eric's thoughts on Martinsville 2015. But you've said it all, buddy. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. And tell people how they can find you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys having me on. We talked a lot about YouTube. So my YouTube channel is just my name, Eric Estepp. But if you type in Out of the Groove, the main show I do, it comes up, I think, pretty quick as well. Twitter is the same thing. It's at Eric Estepp 17. There was an Eric Estepp already when I created my Twitter handle. I don't know don't know who he is, but I will find him. So I had to throw a little 17 on the end there. Those are the main two platforms. From there, you'll find everything else I work on. I also work with the team over at the Daily Downforce. They do a lot of daily NASCAR content as well. They have a store that I sell some merch on as well. So if you're ever looking for some good NASCAR off-season content, check out Daily Downforce as well, and you'll see some of my stuff in the mix.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Eric, and thank you for telling us a little bit about yourself and the story that you've experienced in NASCAR already.
Awesome. Yeah, great to be a part. Appreciate you guys having me on.
We'll be right back. But first, a word from our sponsors.
Pristine Auction is the most trusted sports memorabilia and collectibles auction site. Auctions on pristineauction.com start at just $1 And each day, thousands of signed items are available, so you can win signed authentic items at affordable prices. Every item on pristineauction.com comes with a certificate of authenticity from the industry's most reputable authenticators.
PristineAuction.com is your one-stop shop for authentic signed die-cast, helmets, trading cards, photos, and so much more of your favorite drivers. I've got my eye on some of John Andretti's stuff on PristineAuction.com now. What about you, Roland?
I'm actually looking at a 1959 Daytona 500 inaugural ticket, that race that your great-grandfather won. I don't know if you knew that or not, but I want to put that in my collection possibly and put my bid in today.
And that would be something cool to add to the collection for sure. Well, upgrade your collection today and get $10 off your first win with registration code THAD. Again, that's registration code THAD for $10 off your first order. Links are in the show notes. Induction Innovations is a leader in American-made handheld induction heaters, home to the original mini ducters. For over 20 years, they have been innovating how mechanics can tackle challenges like Loctite, rust, and much more.
Induction Innovations Mini Ductor Series was meant to free up components quickly using induction heat. The Mini Ductor is designed to help techs cut down on ticket times and say, forget that torch.
Induction Innovations. Do it faster, do it better, do it safer. Visit theinductor.com to learn more. That was great getting to talk to Eric and getting to learn some about him. He's definitely become a household name in our sport, so getting the opportunity to learn a little bit about his history, hopefully he'll be around for years to come.
Yeah, really enjoyed talking to Eric. Really nice guy. I've known Eric for about 2 years now, and he's a real deal, real McCoy, shoots straight. I think that's why a lot of fans like him, and it was fun talking to him about moving, his start with his family, getting the channel going with stop motion, larger than life, like literally, figuratively, and literally. I mean, the guy's 6'7", so I know we talked about him fitting in a race car, probably that not being a reality, but super, super happy that he came on board to talk to us today. Hopefully we'll see more of him next year.
I found it very interesting, his comments on the 2015 Martinsville Road. I thought for sure, I saw all the Matt Kenseth stuff behind him, and he's like, dude, Matt's my favorite driver. I was like, yeah.
That's what we do in Maiden Level Cross, man. We ask the hard questions, and I wanted to pitch that one to him, knowing he was a Matt Kenseth fan. And I would have thought he would have, totally just backed his boy the whole time, which he ended up doing after the fact. But the initial reaction, I was kind of surprised. I don't know why I was surprised. Eric is very unbiased and objective when it comes to reporting on NASCAR. So, hats off to Eric. He surprised me, and that was a classic Eric answer. But I think at the end of the day, he went with his Matt Kenseth fandom.
Yeah, for sure. And then hats off to Eric for everything that he's been able to accomplish in the sport already, too. I mean, for him to just a couple years ago be doing stop motion videos to now being a household name in the Cup, Xfinity, and Truck Garage is pretty remarkable for everything he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, the guy got his face on a hood of a car last year, so that's pretty.
And he sponsored a few cars at this point. Makes YouTube videos about all of us. I hope that he doesn't make any about me bad mouthing me. If he does, maybe it'll be like, man, that was a good race.
Well, I believe we'll be talking to Eric quite a lot next year, and I'd like to just get into that. So next year, we kind of teased it a little bit, Thad, about your plans. I think we can unveil your secrets. We can lift the curtain. What is going on next year? Because by the time people are listening to this, you have already made your announcement. So tell us the news.
So I'm super excited about this opportunity. So I'm going to run the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series full time with a brand new team called Faction 46. It's a Nice affiliate team. So we'll be running in conjunction with the Nice group. And I've been over there and met all those guys, Al Nice, Cody Efall, all those guys. So super excited to get to work next year and try and win some races with this brand new team. It's always a struggle at first when you get a brand new team, the growing pains that come along with it and everything else. But hopefully latching onto a team like Nice that's been in the sport for a long time will help, I guess, shorten that curve, So super excited about the opportunity to go full-time in the Truck Series and be the first Petty to run full-time in NASCAR since '08 is another really cool opportunity. And then with it being the Petty's 75th year in racing, I mean, the storyline's awesome. And I get my number back. Super excited about that. I get to run the 46 again next year. A lot of good mojo going into Daytona. So keep our head down and try and go win some races next year and make the playoffs and just one step at a time.
Yeah, I can say firsthand because I've been working right beside you. There's probably a lot of nerves. There's a lot of excitement, a lot of trepidation. There's just a mix of feelings going into this. But, I mean, you've been working at this for, gosh, how many years? Over 10,
yeah.
Right? Would you say?
Yeah.
So 10 years. When you finally get into the truck at Daytona, because you've already tested your seat out so far, but when you actually strap in to go racing, what's going to be going through your mind? Like, where is your head going to be at?
It's hard to say it not knowing. Like when you strap in at Daytona, it's a lot. It's a lot every time I do it. But I just take everything race by race is kind of what my grandpa talked to me about a couple of years ago. He's like, you can't live in the past and can't live in the future. You can only live in the present. So I think just taking it one race at a time and getting on the same page with all my team. And the emotions always run high at Daytona, and the restrictor plate racing isn't necessarily my favorite racing. Daytona's atmosphere is awesome, but restrictor plate racing, I just kind of take it for what it is. I've had the fastest car there and been wrecked on lap 4, and I've had something that I could barely keep up with and ran top 5. So it's just kind of is what it is what I always tell people about those places. Yeah, it's really cool. You're going 200 miles an hour and you're a couple inches apart from each other, but strapping in at Daytona is always a pleasure and an honor, especially with all my family history at Daytona. Man, that's a box I'd really like to check. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be the 500 just to win a race at Daytona would be awesome for me. And like you said, people think these things just happen. Like they just think, man, your grandpa's going to put you in the 43 car. It just doesn't work like that.
No, it does not.
No, it's not just how it works. So, yeah, we've been working hard on this particular opportunity since last summer. So it's been a lot of blood, sweat, and tears already getting us to this point, and hopefully we can capitalize on all the hard work that everybody's put in during this off season, starting at Daytona and then carry it to Atlanta and Vegas and all the way through the schedule is my goal. But, again, super excited about this opportunity.
Well, it's interesting because I have the unique pleasure of, this is a brand new team. This is I've helped with NASCAR sponsorships in the past, but this is kind of new territory for me. This is brand new team. You're in all essence, you're a rookie driver. I know you are, but you did some start last year, but this is a fresh slate for you. For the people who are new to this, sport, or if people have been watching the sport, I don't think they get the behind the scenes look about what goes into it. So, you found a ride, right? So that was a climb as it stood. But once you're signed in, like, why don't you tell everybody, like, what are the next steps? What's involved? When a driver gets a contract, he signs it. What goes on during that off season up until that first race? What are you doing on a weekly basis to prepare yourself? Like, making sure sponsors are there. Like, what's involved with that process? Because I'm sure a lot of people aren't aware. I think people just think that the haulers come out, the trucks get wrapped like the week before, and bam, you're racing.
Yeah.
And there's obviously more to that. So why don't you take us behind the scenes with that aspect, and what are you doing right now pre-announcement, right?
Yeah. So, well, first we're working hard on the announcement, right? We're working hard on everything else. But as far as the racing stuff goes, me and my crew chief, Doug George, are forming a relationship. I've been at the shop, delivered my seats, saw my Daytona truck, just getting some body work done to it and going to get ready to get some suspension and stuff on it. And this is several months before Daytona. So the Atlanta truck, the Vegas truck, all those trucks were there. So I got to see all of them. So a lot of the shop stuff is for the team to handle, which I do like to take a part in that just to see and be there. But outside of that, NASCAR is a lot more physically demanding than people give it credit for. So working out, sim time, all that stuff is really, really vital to be successful behind the wheel of the race car. So those are things that I do on a daily basis. Hopefully we can get some Chevrolet sim time this year, and that would help our team tremendously. So to be able to run laps at places that I've never seen or been to before on the simulator before I go. And then, of course, the iRacing that everyone has access to is something that I lean on heavily to get a feel for racetracks that I've never seen, especially this past year in the TA2 series. Like, man, 80% of the racetracks I went to, I didn't never see in person until I unloaded there. So at least I'll have a little bit different viewpoint next year in the truck series because I ran ARCA and I got to run the Kansas and I got to run Vegas in the truck and Atlanta and Daytona. I think I've run 4 or 5 times now. So getting to see some of these places is a big advantage.
Is there any place you're looking forward to in particular? Like, is there a track that you're like, man, I mean, I saw Coda's on the schedule and you did pretty well at Coda with Trans Am. Like, is that, I mean, that's something I'm curious myself about. Like, how does that going to translate those road course skills that you refined with Trans Am? Do you feel it can't not help you, but do you feel that you have an advantage going in over the rest of the field because of Trans Am?
I would like to think so, but I guess I'll find out when I go to Coda. I would like to think that being that I've run, I don't know how many laps I ran, like 50, 60 laps there that day, that it would help me. I mean, I don't see how it could hurt me. I know those cars are a little bit different. They're lighter. They don't have quite as much horsepower, but we're still on a radial tire. They still have a similar transmission. So a lot of that is, I don't know, apples to oranges, I guess. I mean, we'll just find out when we unload at Coda. Coda's definitely one on the top of my list. I was hoping that we would go back to Mid-Ohio because I ran really good there in the ARCA car and I ran good there in the TA2 car. I really like that racetrack. And then Bristol. Man, I love Bristol. And we get to go there twice next year, and it's not dirt. Nothing, no offense to anybody that likes the dirt stuff. It's just not really my cup of tea, especially on a place like Bristol. Like if we ran it at Eldora or like an actual dirt track, I think it'd be awesome. But Bristol's cool enough when it's concrete. I don't think you need to put dirt on it to make it cool. So going there, and of course Daytona, we were just talking about it. The energy at Daytona is unmatched anywhere else. So always top of the list to get to go there and participate in the 500 weekend is always really cool.
Has it like registered to you? Let me say it this way. Is it real to you yet? Like, have you had this moment of like, oh my God, this is actually happening? Has that happened yet? Or do you think?
I don't think so. I think it's for right now. I'm kind of just treating it as like every other season, right? I mean, I'm doing my work. I'm doing my homework, just grinding it out, getting everything I can get outside of the car so that way I can perform well inside of the car. But I think at some point it'll hit me. I just don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be the announcement with everybody there or if it's going to be on pit road at Daytona where it's like, man, I'm part of this group of 36 drivers this year.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat. So, I mean, I'll check back in with you.
I'll definitely ask that question because I think that's something I know a lot of people are probably asking as well. Like for any driver who's starting out, you know, has it registered with you yet? What's been the family's reaction? I mean, now that the contract's done, now the hard work starts. What's been the reaction from mom, dad, Lauren's family? You know, what's grandpa like? What's it been like?
It's a bunch of high fives and fist bumps. man, we finally did it. You know, so something we've been trying to do was go full time in a competitive ride. And we feel that this is an opportunity for not only me, but for the entire family to get back in victory lane and to run well and be competitive at a high level. It's hard to win races, man. It's really hard to win races at the NASCAR level, any of them. I mean, Cup, Xfinity, trucks, every weekend those guys prove it. So I think that just having the opportunity in a competitive ride has been, unimaginable to me.
Sure.
So for me to get this opportunity, my family's been nothing but supportive, excited. Grandpa's pumped up. Nobody can wait for Daytona. It's like, man, we finally did it. Now we have to wait for 3 months. So Daytona can't come quick enough, not only for me, but for all the people involved in this. And there's so many people. I mean, we could make a whole podcast of people thanking for this opportunity. But I'm definitely grateful that I'm the one that gets to drive the number 46 truck next year.
It's pretty cool. I mean, and I'm honored to be a part of it with you. It's awesome to have Lane Moore. I don't think we mentioned Lane. I mean, Lane's brand new Truck Series owner. So, grateful to him for being such a cool boss, right?
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
And I got to meet him in person for the first time at Bristol, and it was almost like I'd known him my whole life. It was like one of those weird connections where it's like you just kind of hit it off, and I was like, man, this is going to be a fun year. And at the end of the day, that's what we want to win races. We want to be competitive, but what good is it if you have no fun doing it? So I'm looking forward to the group that we've built around me and this Faction 46 team for the 2024 season, and we're going to have a lot of fun for sure. Hopefully we run really good.
Yeah, that 46, I mean, the team's Faction 46, your number's 46, which I'll get into shortly, but just for the audience, so the Faction 46, we asked Lane, what's with the name? Why isn't it racing? Why is it motorsports? Why isn't it this? Why isn't it that? Faction, this is what I've been told. Faction being, they're different. We're doing things differently. We're focusing on a lot of different aspects, the partners, the driver, that we're making it a family atmosphere. Not saying other teams don't do that already, but we're trying to do things a little bit differently. And then 46, not only is that your number, but I thought it was neat that, Lane's going to be the first owner from Oklahoma, which was the 46th state in the union. So that's like a really cool tie-in. But getting back to 46, for people who don't know, I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you obviously know who Thad is and kind of aware of the lineage. But, you got your great-grandfather Lee with the 42, your grandpa 43, Uncle Kyle's got 44, and then your cousin Adam's got 45. What does that do to you? Like, to know that you are now, you got like the torch passed to you. And now, I mean, because I wasn't aware of how the number thing worked with NASCAR, but it's not just like you can say, I want this number and it's automatically given to you. So, I mean, how cool is it that you have 46? Like, what does it mean to you to have that number? It's uniquely yours, correct?
Yeah, I think that it just kind of gives me some identity with outside of the Petty name, right? Because it's not like I don't enjoy being part of the Petty family, but I don't enjoy getting compared to Richard Petty every day my entire life. So, and if I drive the 43 car, no disrespect to anybody who's ever driven the 43 car, but you're never going to be Richard Petty. You're always running Richard Petty's number is on your door when you're driving the 43 car, which is an honor. And I was honored to drive the 43 car in the TA2 series and select truck races. And I've run the 43 car a lot throughout my racing career, but for me to get the 46 tied to my name, Thad Moffitt, and kind of gives me my own identity like that. Like 45 was Adam.
Yeah.
Right. And then 42 was Lee, and Uncle Kyle kind of had a little bit of everything.
Yeah. He had he pretty much ran them all, right?
He ran
except
about everything, but I remember the 44 Hot Wheels car because that was my childhood. Was the 44 Hot Wheels car, and then for me, like when people see that 46 number in the petty font, I want them to think Thad Moffitt, right? So I think it's really cool to get the number, which is difficult. Like you said, that's a process in and of itself. But for us to be able to pull it off, and then all the tie-in with Lane for being from Oklahoma and it being the 46th state in the union, just made all the sense in the world for us to put some resources behind it to get the number 46.
Well, I'm super excited. Again, by the time you hear this, the announcement will have already been made. But we're psyched for you, Thad. I'm getting ready for that. There's a lot of little things that need to go right. People, logistics, but it's going to be done well. And the bummer is, I'm not going to see you around the garage as much. You'll be at the fancy race team, but you'll make your way to the garage once in a while. And because if you don't, you won't get some of that fancy new coffee we just released. So have you had any of that?
Yeah. Well, Level Cross is part of my life. Remember that. That's what this whole show is about. So I'll never not. I'll never not in the garage. I just won't be there as much, I guess. Yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity and grateful again. And I appreciate everybody for tuning in today and listening to Made in Level Cross. Remember to like and subscribe and do all that fancy stuff. And you can find me on social media at Thad Moffitt, and then on Facebook and Twitter at Thad Moffitt Racing.
You got it. Big thanks to everyone for listening. Big thanks to Pristine Auction for presenting this show. And until next time, I'll talk to you guys later.